All righty, everyone. Good morning. To see you, it's always a pleasure. And we're hoping and praying that we don't have a repeat of last week when, for some reason, the connection became unstable and all of a sudden just dropped. But hopefully that will not occur again today. This morning, we're going to be looking at the call of the disciples, and specifically Peter and I believe Andrew and James and John, the four fishermen. So let us begin with a word of prayer. God of grace and God of glory, we give you thanks for calling us once again to gather and to ponder the wisdom that is waiting for us in the sacred words of long ago. We open our hearts and our minds that we may receive your truth, and we pray that as we continue life's journey, we may find ways to serve you using these blessings that you are waiting even now to bestow upon us. And we ask this through our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. All righty. So, as I say, this is the call of the disciples, and let us. And I just realized I didn't cue this up. So it might not start exactly.
And set him on the pinnacle of the temple and said to him,
Okay.
If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down. For it is written, He will command His angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone.
The temptations in the
Jesus
wilderness.
said to him, Again it is written, You shall not put the Lord your God to the test. Again the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. And he said to him, All these I will give you, if you will fall down and worship me. Then Jesus said to him, Begone, Satan, for it is written, You shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve. Then the devil left him, and behold, angels came and were ministering to him. Now when you...
All right, I'm just stopping there for a second. So, as I said, I didn't cue it up. What you heard were the last two temptations in the wilderness. And one of the things that I will say is that when Jesus is baptized and the voice says, this is my beloved son with whom I'm well pleased, very affirming, motivating, inspiring moment. And you might think that that revs Jesus up to go out and begin his ministry. But he doesn't. He goes into the wilderness first to face his temptations. And in fact, in Mark's gospel, it says that the Spirit drove him into the wilderness, forced him to go out into the wilderness. And I've always found that really helpful, because essentially what's happening is Jesus is going out into the wilderness to face the things that might tempt him away from being the Messiah that God wanted him to be. If you think about it, the three temptations out in the wilderness: turn stones into bread. Jesus can do that. He can turn them into gold coins, and he can have all kinds of riches. Throw himself down from the pinnacle of the temple and levitated by angels. If Jesus does that, he's going to be famous. And if he worships Satan, he'll have all the kingdoms of the world. He'll be powerful. And in some respects, that's what the people were looking for. That was the kind of Messiah that they wanted. And so Jesus knew that there was going to be this temptation to be a different kind of Messiah than God wanted him to be. And so he has to deal with this first before he begins his ministry. So now, and I think there's wisdom in that for us as well, going out into our own wilderness, so to speak, to deal with the things that can lead us away from being the person God wants us to be, instead of the person that we think we might want to be or others tell us we should be. So on to the call of the...
Heard that John had been arrested. He withdrew into Galilee, and leaving Nazareth, he went and lived in Capernaum by the sea, in the territory of Zebulun and Naphtali. So that what was spoken by the prophet Isaiah might be fulfilled. The land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, the way of the sea beyond the Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles, the people dwelling in darkness have seen a great light. And for those dwelling in the region and shadow of death, on them a light has dawned. From that time Jesus began to preach, saying, Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. While walking by the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, who was called Peter, and Andrew his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. Immediately they left their nets and followed him. And going on from there, he saw two other brothers, James the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, in the boat with Zebedee their father, mending their nets. And he called them. Immediately they left the boat and their father, and followed him. And he went throughout all Galilee, teaching in their synagogues, and proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom, and healing every disease and every affliction among the people.
All right. Questions, comments, and conundrums.
I was going to say in the very first line, we have to wait until chapter 14 of Matthew to find out what happened to
What happens to John?
what happened to John.
Yep.
Also, I was interested. I was interested in the prophecy of Isaiah.
Yep.
About that, and that prophecy I wasn't.
It's not one of the more familiar
No, it
ones.
wasn't very familiar
No.
with that one.
You will find more quotations of the Hebrew scriptures in Matthew's gospel than all the other gospels combined. And a gold star to anyone who can tell me why we find more quotations from the Hebrew scriptures in Matthew's gospel than all the others. He was writing to convince Jews that Jesus was the Messiah. That was his audience. And so obviously, if you're going to try to convince Jews that Jesus is Messiah, you're going to use this sacred scriptures. So absolutely. And this one, as you say, Tom, is not one of the more familiar ones. Anything else catch your fancy here?
It's come up many times when this scripture has come up. They left immediately.
Immediately.
It's always something that gets me.
Yep. So the title of the sermon Sunday, which I'm still trying to crystallize, the title I know is For Your Immediate Consideration, or For Your Immediate Attention. And I'm starting out by asking the question, what are you waiting for? And when was the last time someone asked you that question? You know, what are you waiting for? And what I came to realize, or am coming to realize, is that in some respects, Jesus wasn't a very patient man. If you think about it, he calls Peter and Andrew. And does he wait there while they think about it?
No, he kept on walking.
Yeah, it's sort of like, you know, come follow me. And of course, that raises the question, did he have this like Svengali power over people so that he could make them do whatever he wanted them to do? Does it make sense that they leave immediately the life that they've known? Does that make sense? Or what do you think is going on here? Yes, Jack.
I think that they knew him
Okay.
before that.
Okay.
They figured that he was the Messiah coming to be the king and save their world. So they would. The only thing I was thinking about is the sons that are with the father, and they leave the father all alone in that boat to do all this fishing.
Sure. Yeah. It's one thing to be Peter and Andrew, where they're just fishing by themselves, but James and John, they leave their father in the boat by himself, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And then I'm also thinking to myself, do you think that a life of a fisherman was glamorous.
No.
So in part, I'm thinking to myself, was it really that hard of a choice?
Right.
Jesus is the Messiah. Let's go with him. And let's also look at it from this perspective. This is very early on in his ministry. And what did people think the Messiah was going to be?
Gladiator, basically.
Yeah, a conquering hero.
Yeah.
So if you've got a choice between catching smelly fish and gutting them to sell and going with this guy who you understand is the Messiah and you think is going to lead you to fame and riches, is it really that hard of a choice?
So do you think they were following Jesus for their own benefit?
I think there was some of that, sure. Yeah. And that raises another interesting question. Does Peter, do you think Jesus has a problem with following him for your own benefit?
No.
I think that's why he wants you to follow him, is for your benefit. Now, the disciples benefited in a very different way than they thought they were going to benefit, but they definitely benefited. And so Jesus saying, follow me, I don't think he had a problem if they were doing it for their benefit. Yes, Don.
If you look at the people of the day, and you're talking about fishermen or agricultural people in the fields,
Yep.
these people, as primitive as it was from our perspective,
Mm-hmm.
they had a living and they had security that they had, and these fellows were leaving that security, which is a really different perspective than saying, "Oh, I want to get out of here."
Okay.
As much as it's the smelly fish,
Yeah.
I can't think of a fisherman, a lobsterman in Maine who would leave his boats. He's dedicated to it.
True.
And,
Yeah.
and that's his living.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing, having been in Maine for 10 years in South Portland. It's hard work, but you ask the average lobsterman, would you do something else? And they'd say no. Yeah.
Yeah, look at that lady who's now 101 and still lobstering.
Oh, I didn't hear about that.
Yes, she was on, they interviewed her
In
a year or so
Chronicle.
ago on Chronicle.
Okay.
But there is a quality of Jesus, and in life, I actually have probably crossed the path with one or two people, which I really say are, and the word would be charismatic.
Charismatic.
That there is something about an aura of credibility, honesty, and truth that they project. Whether I'm sure that they, like everyone, have clay feet, but they, as well, but they are something that you would, if they said, "Come with me on an adventure," you would almost be ready to pick everything up and go.
Right. Right.
Sorry, we should stop talking about me.
It's almost gonna go to.
Yes. Yeah. Just remember, Andy, that the Messiah ended up on a cross. So, but yes, Don.
I do want to address that because Andrew went on something that is exactly what Jesus was teaching.
Okay.
What he was teaching was learn love, basically, and apply it to others. And that's what you do when you go out and help somebody else. And you mentioned earlier about the immediacy or the urgency.
Yeah.
What's the difference between the two?
Yeah.
And urgency is for something current.
Okay.
And the other desire is for change, which doesn't have to happen immediately, but it may start immediately. I just finished reading a book that referred to the fact, well, if you're going to help people, you're going to wait till they die before you help them, or you're going to help them now.
Oh.
And I think that perspective says do it now.
Mm-hmm. Yep. There's definitely an urgency and immediacy here. And it's repeated twice. Jesus calls Peter and Simon, Peter and Andrew, and it says immediately they left. And that immediately has two sides of the coin. One is they immediately followed Jesus, and the other side of the coin is Jesus wasn't going to wait around for them. And then same thing with James and John. Immediately they leave the boat and their nets and their father and follow Jesus, and once again, Jesus isn't going to wait around. And so there is an immediacy, here, and it's follow him. And I keep finding myself thinking about this as I kind of work on the sermon, is Jesus saying to each of us in some way, depending on our own life circumstances, what are you waiting for? Okay. What are you waiting for when it comes to that problem? Or what are you waiting for when it comes to that relationship? Or what are you waiting for when it comes to that dream that you've
Why are
always...
you waiting?
Well, why are you waiting? Oh,
Why are you
interesting.
waiting?
Why are you waiting? Yep. Why are you waiting?
What's holding you back? What's your hesitancy? What's in the way of you getting up and leaving that boat and following?
Interesting.
They lost that. They went and followed.
Right.
What would have held up?
Yeah. So that's another interesting aspect, Don, is that when you follow him, not only do you gain something, but inevitably you're going to lose things as well. And sometimes it's what's familiar and what's comfortable. And that can be, that can be difficult. I mean, I was just thinking, as you mentioned this, Don, about Abraham. Okay, God says to Abraham, leave your family and your kindred and go to, and interesting, he says, and go to the land that you visited last year and you really liked it because there was a lot of fertile land to farm on. I think, he says, leave your family and your kindred and go to the land that I will show you. So Abraham goes off, he leaves everything behind, and he's not really sure where he's going. And at least the disciples are in a little bit different situation. They're leaving behind everything they've known, but they know that they're going with this guy who is, they believe, the Messiah. Now, they discovered that he was a different Messiah than they were hoping for, and they had to recalibrate, so to speak. But I think that's a good question, Dawn. In addition to what are you waiting for, why are you waiting? Exactly.
You just said something and
Uh-oh.
and I lost it. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. I thought I had a question over here.
No, it'll come back.
It'll come back. Yeah. So
Why are we waiting? Because we all like to procrastinate.
we like to procrastinate. Yes. And as I was jotting down thoughts and ideas for the Sunday sermon, I remembered a quote. I think it was Mark Twain. And Mark Twain said, never put off until tomorrow what you can put off until the day after tomorrow. And as I'm sitting here thinking about all of this, I'm thinking of a saying that my friend I always would use. And this is a friend who just passed away. And he didn't like wakes, funerals and things like that. And he said, so many people go to wakes and they think of things that they wish they had said or done or whatnot. And so he always had this saying, no regrets, no regrets.
We've just come off of Martin Luther King's holiday, and Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel was the rabbi who walked in the front line with him. They both gave speeches, one following the other. And the object of the speech in both instances, and the whole purpose of the march was, we can't wait any longer.
We can't wait any longer.
We need to do it now.
We need to do it
That
now.
was the whole premise of what they did. You can run into all sorts of roadblocks, politics, bureaucracy, inconvenience, whatever you want. But those are great excuses for not doing anything. And what you mentioned earlier about security, the comfortable place, it's scary to move from it.
Yeah.
But if you have a faith, then you know you've got the security of God behind you or with you or leading you, and you can go with all the risks that are there with a little more security if you've got that foundation of faith. If you don't have that foundation of faith, that's a little harder to do.
Exactly. So one of the things I'm thinking about is this is really a two-part equation, so to speak. What are you waiting for? Okay. And how do you know? And the Lord might be saying that to you, what are you waiting for when it comes to this decision or that problem or this relationship or that dream? How do you know what it is that you need to do? Okay, you might have a problem and you might be procrastinating about it, and the Lord might be saying to you, what are you waiting for? Deal with it. But how do you know what it is that you need to do?
Because I think God tells you the way to go too. He gives you directions.
Okay.
If you listen.
Okay.
You don't have to listen.
Okay.
But if you listen, he gives you directions.
Okay. So, but okay. So I agree. The Lord might be saying, what are you waiting for? But the Lord will also help you discern what it is that you need to do. And how do you discern that? The answer is right in here. You'll see it. The answer is in here twice.
Follow me.
What's that?
Follow me.
Yeah, follow me. Follow me. And the more you follow him, the more you will be led to that abundant life. And the more you'll be able to deal with the problems that stand in the way of that abundant life, or the relationships that may be dragging you away from that abundant life. And back to what we were talking about before, following him, the disciples did it for their benefit. And I think the Lord would say, good. That's why I want you to follow me, is for your benefit, not for mine, but for yours. And the more you follow me, the more you will benefit in many ways. So what are you waiting for? Follow me now, not tomorrow. And again, he didn't wait for the four of them. He said, follow me now. And why did they follow them? I agree with you, Jack, that the word had probably been spreading. And, one of the things that we don't know is because the Gospels are not chronological biographies, okay? And so, maybe it was good that I didn't queue up the reading here and we began with the temptations in the wilderness, okay? But here's one of the limitations of the Gospels. So we had the three temptations in the wilderness, and then immediately we're going on to Jesus calling the disciples, okay? So here's my question. Did Jesus finish up the temptations in the wilderness on Sunday? And then on Sunday afternoon, he called Peter and Andrew and James and John? And probably not. Yeah, I agree. My sense here is that Jesus comes out of the wilderness and he starts preaching and healing. And we don't know. There could have been a period of 3 or 4 months between Jesus coming out of the wilderness.
We don't know where
We don't.
exactly this wilderness was, right? And he would walk. I mean,
Right, they would walk.
He could have
Well,
just
the answer
tortured
to that.
himself or something, but he can walk everywhere. So
Exactly.
it could have taken him
He walks.
to walk from wherever
Right.
he was. He could have been preaching to Bedouin or somebody out
Mhm,
in the desert, and then maybe
Exactly. Exactly. So the point is that there is quite possibly a period of time between the temptations in the wilderness and the calling of the disciples, which means that there was time for word to spread around. You know, people would go from community to community, and you can hear someone coming to Capernaum and saying, "Oh, you wouldn't believe there's this guy. His name is Jesus, and he healed this person who was crippled, and people are wondering if he's really the Messiah." And so it's possible that Peter and Andrew, James, and John had some inkling about who he was. And so I tend to like that scenario better than the Jesus being the Svengali who, could make people
Right.
do
Yeah.
things.
Which I don't think he
Yeah.
really wasn't.
He always gives you, yeah.
I mean, he did call for action. I like, come down from the tree, or you over there, tax collector.
Yep.
I'm coming to your house for dinner.
Right.
But he was never. There was never a hint of any.
No.
surrounding it.
So here's the,
But don't you think, like, I always felt like there was, like, I think if you are, like, receptive to it.
Yep.
You're probably, like, he must have had like
a charisma.
charisma,
Yeah.
or just like, you could like sense there was some special thing about him or
Mhm.
whatever.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, some people would like, I don't want to even think about that.
Right.
but-
Right.
But that's still different than
Yeah.
like a zombie.
Exactly. These weren't zombies. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, I think it's probably a combination of things. I think that Jesus did have this charismatic personality. And I think that there was a period of time between the temptations and the time he got to the Sea of Galilee and called the disciples. And notice that in the scripture, he says, "Follow me." Okay. He doesn't say, "Follow me or else." He doesn't say, "Follow me, and if you don't, you'll be sorry."
He
Okay.
also doesn't say, "Follow me, I have a job for you." He just says, "Follow me."
Oh, interesting.
There's nothing in there that says why we should follow him, other than the fact that it gets down to the point that in following him,
Interesting.
it's
Yeah.
like following somebody with a concert. You learn their songs, you go on to each concert, and he's doing the healing and the preaching, and they're following him.
Yeah.
Why?
He
Right.
does say that we make pictures of men. So-
Say again, please. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he does tell them what they're gonna do.
Oh, make him fishers of men.
Yes.
But-
Right.
And the fact that he's teaching in the last verse of this says how he's showing them what is done to be fishers of men.
Yeah.
But boy, that's a vague statement to follow him on. How
Yeah.
many fishers of men? What?
Yeah, he doesn't make any promises.
No.
He doesn't make any predictions. He says, "Follow me." But you're right. He does say, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men."
The other,
That sounded better than.
the other was just
Yeah.
the news that he hears. When Jesus hears that John has
Been arrested. John is arrested. Yep.
Does that mean I better begin my ministry quick, or I'm going to be nipped in the bud like John?
It's a good. It's a good
Does that
question.
become an incentive for him to? Does that become a call for action?
Sense of urgency.
Well, I think that Jesus wasn't naive.
No.
And so when he hears that John has been arrested and he knows that they're basically in the same boat, so to speak, they're part of the same cause, he undoubtedly realizes that he's probably going to be in danger as well. So he removes himself from the danger. And, as the saying goes, he who fights and runs away lives to fight another day. And by the way, this is also why in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, his entire 3-year ministry takes place in the northern part of the country, in Galilee. Okay. This is where John is different. John has Jesus going back and forth. He goes to Jerusalem numerous times, and that just did not happen. And the reason why is because the opposition to Jesus was centered in Jerusalem. That's where the Pharisees' base of power was. That's where the temple was. That's where the high priest was. And that's where the Roman governor was. was. And so Jesus knows that if he wants to get his cause, his mission, his movement going, he needs to focus in the northern part. So in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, Jesus does not go to Jerusalem until it's time to go to the cross. So he doesn't go to Jerusalem until the last week of his life. But that's another aspect of the story. I will make you fishers of men. And are we doing a lot of fishing these days?
He's going around, he's active, he's healing diseases, he's doing things.
Mhm.
He's actively doing things for people. And I think the lesson he gives us as individuals then and now is,
Mhm.
what are you doing for someone else?
Yep.
What are you doing for people?
Yep.
And with his teachings, he's teaching you love. With his actions, he's teaching you what to do with that love.
Mhm.
I think that's the methodology that's involved here.
Yes, absolutely. And, I want to go back to it says fish for people. Does it say that in here? No, he says fishers of men. The more inclusive translations say, I will make you fish for people. I grew up with the RSV, so it's hard for me to get past the fishers of men because I understand that men is being used in the generic sense here. But, if we follow him, that's part of our job description. We are called we're called to go fishing, so to speak. But there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. There is what I call selfish evangelism, and there is faithful evangelism. What do you think the difference is between the two?
Instructive and assistive.
Instructive and assistive?
Tell people what to do or help them to.
Okay, tell them what to do. Yeah, okay. And certainly that wasn't what Jesus did.
You shouldn't try to convert people so you can say, look how many people I converted. That's not doing it for the right reason.
Mhm. Yeah.
I was thinking, I had never thought of it till I just saw like the verse that we were going to do.
Which verse? I'm sorry.
Well, just that we were talking about.
Oh, okay.
fishes and men things
Yep.
this week. And that is that, you do kind of have to be like a fisherman. You kind of throw
Mm-hmm.
a line in there.
Yep.
and The fish will swim around, see like nibbles or whatever.
Yep.
And you might have to keep throwing your line.
Okay, right. So
Sometimes you don't catch anything.
sometimes you don't catch anything. Yeah.
Catch a lot.
So what he's not advocating is for you to wade into the water and trap a fish and make it
Yeah.
hook itself.
Throw a
Yeah.
big line.
Yeah. So let me give you explanation or understanding maybe here. Selfish evangelism is, and there are churches that do this because they get desperate. Okay, I can see this. When I go on vacation, I go to a church and around a lot of people there, and people will swarm around me, and they see, it's sort of like, oh, possible nibble here.
Yeah.
Okay. But basically selfish evangelism is a fishing that basically says, you have something, we need it. Come in and give it to us. We need more pledges to balance the budget. We need more people to teach Sunday school. Oh, and by the way, make sure that you teach Sunday school the way we've always taught it. I can remember years ago, and we were guilty of it a little bit, the choir. Okay. I can remember a beloved member of the choir from many years ago who would complain about people not coming and joining the choir. And in a part of that was, we want all of you people out there to come and join the choir. And by the way, we want you to sing the songs that we like to sing. And, music is changing. And a lot of the old chestnuts that were very popular back in the 60s and the 70s doesn't appeal to younger people. So selfish evangelism is when the attitude is, you have something, we need it, come in and give it to us. It happens. And you know what? People can see that. They can see through that in a second. Okay. Faithful evangelism is just the opposite. Faithful evangelism, and this is what I think and I believe we're trying to do now, particularly with Faith and Fellowship, is faithful evangelism says, or faithful fishing, if you want to put it that way, is I've experienced something and it's made a difference in my life. And I believe it can make a difference in your life too. And I'd like to share it with you. That's faithful evangelism. That's faithful fishing.
It's more like, come join our school of fish.
Yeah, come and join our school of fish. Yep.
Catch you.
Yep.
Do something.
Yeah.
Teach you.
Yeah, no, they're totally different. Yep. Yes, Don.
Evangelism that works is an evangelism of activism rather than saying. In other words, we tell people the example of how you live tells who you are rather than what you say. A person who, I think one of my favorite examples has always been the policeman in the old days walking along. There's an apple, so he takes the apple as he goes along, and everybody accepts that. It's okay for him to take it, but if you take it, it's stealing.
Yeah.
There are different standards. So it's the example you set by your actions.
Yeah.
Is what I think is the true evangelism that we're
Okay,
doing.
yes,
Which
so-
is what Faith and Fellowship trying to do, reaching out into the community and doing things. What can I do for you? Rather than saying, come do this with me. I'll show you how to do it.
Right. But it's got to be more than just reaching out,
Much more.
because, you just reach out, you put on an event or something like that, and people say, oh, thank you very much. I'll see you again next year.
You got it.
Okay. As a part of this, it's got to be, people have to come to realize or see that there is something better. There is something that can change their life, for the better. And that's what faithful evangelism is all about. And, that's what Jesus did with the disciples. He said, follow me. Okay. And they followed him because why?
His charisma is what did that. He's a part.
And maybe based on what Jack was saying, maybe they had heard about Jesus, like what he did.
Yeah.
And said, I want to be part of that.
I want to be part of
They
that.
were honored that he asked.
Okay.
That's why he was.
Okay. Honored that he.
They were just fishermen.
Mhm.
And he also, I'm sure they don't know what he meant exactly when he said, I'll be a fisherman, but it does sound like a more important thing to do than to fish for fish.
Yep.
So they also thought, well, I can, do some important work.
Right,
I know
right.
I can do
Yep.
important.
They followed him because they were convinced that it was going to make their lives better. It's as simple as that. Now, they thought it was going to make their lives better in a very different way. Okay. They thought it was going to make their lives better because he was going to be that rich and famous and powerful Messiah. Okay. But as they continued to follow him, they discovered that it made their lives better in a much better way. A better.
Deeper.
Yeah, in a much more meaningful way.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I'm confused in one aspect.
Okay. How are you
And
confused?
The phrase I'll use is you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Fine. We're presenting it, we lead them to water.
Mhm.
Why are they drinking?
Because they're thirsty.
Right, what makes them thirsty?
But
In what we're doing.
I'm guessing that they believed in what Jesus was telling them, and that they were kind of like buying into his
So they
program.
took that next bold step to buy into it.
Right, so they bought into it.
Eventually they did. It took a long time, 3 years. And even after he's resurrected, they're saying, Lord, will you restore the kingdom to Israel at this time?
Come back and fight the Romans for us.
Yeah, come back and fight the Romans for us. So, they struggled to get the better understanding of better, but eventually they did. Absolutely.
It ended up costing all of them their lives, pretty
Yep.
much.
We know that only one of the disciples
Was not-
died of natural causes.
Which one was that?
Gold star to anyone who can tell me. John. John is the only one. He, according to tradition, lived to a ripe old age of his 90s and then passed away. All the others were martyred for their faith in various ways. And the one that I always remember is Peter was crucified, but it was crucified differently. How?
Upside down.
He was crucified hanging upside down because he didn't feel that he was worthy enough to be crucified in the same manner as Jesus. So a Peter's cross, okay, it'll have the cross down at the bottom instead of at the top. Yep. Yes, Tom.
I was just going to say, thinking of, just trying to step way back and look at the context of what was going on, wasn't there at that time, there was a reasonably sized group of zealots?
Yes.
And so that these young fishermen may have been influenced by the
Oh, yeah.
by the kind of the zealot philosophy.
Yeah, there's no doubt that-
around.
There's no
So
doubt.
that they heard something who they didn't think was who really didn't consider him a zealot, but it was like some interesting new ideas
Mhm,
that were, and so there was kind of a ferment of young Jewish.
Oh, sure. The disciples didn't follow Jesus in a vacuum. They knew what was going on in their country and around them. And my apologies, Shelley. She has made a couple of comments here, and she says some of the toughest experiences offer you great wisdom and direction, and I would agree with that. And then she says, should we then be grateful for what has caused our discomfort to then question what direction we should take? And I would say yes, to a degree. I would say that, well, I'll put it this way. When the worst time or the best time is to counsel someone, to do pastoral counseling?
When they need it,
When things are at their worst,
right?
because they've tried everything else and they realize that they need to go in a different direction. Although I will say that some people will come to see me because they think that I'll be able to figure an easy way out of the problem that they haven't thought of yet. But, I always say a couple of things. One is that very often the best answer to the problem is the last option that you want to take to deal with the problem. And then the other thing I'll say is that very often, how you can tell that you're doing the right thing?
You feel better.
Well, you feel better, but I'll also say things get worse before they get better. People sometimes think that, okay, I follow Jesus and I do this instead of that, and everything's going to be wonderful. It doesn't work that way. And look at Mary. After Mary said, behold, I am the handmaid of the Lord. Let it be to me according to your word. Did her life suddenly become all sunshine and roses? No. And in her Magnificat, she says, henceforth, all generations shall call me blessed. Or was that Elizabeth saying that about her? I'll have to go back and check. But it says, future generations will call you
Right.
blessed, not this generation. Okay. So yes, I think we can be thankful because in our troubles, there is always opportunity. Okay. But that doesn't mean I'm going to go looking for trouble to see what opportunity it has for me. And so, look at the disciples. Yeah. Was it easy following Jesus? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But it's always a blessing to follow him. Any other questions? You've given me so much information now. I've got to go and process it all so I can put it into a less than 45-minute sermon. Yes, Jack.
13 minutes.
I just wanted to say that throughout this whole process, it
Yeah.
was like Jesus said, follow me, and like you say, he walked away.
Yep.
So in life, we're given choices.
Choices.
And in this case, it was up to the disciples or up to us to
Right.
make the right choice.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
how we get there is another thing.
Yeah. Jesus doesn't force anyone to follow him. It's always our decision.
I think the mental conditioning we need to get to, which is the hardest thing in this day and age.
Which is?
Of being, look at me, or it's my way.
Yeah.
The highway is not my will, but my way.
And I think the other challenge to following him is that we live in an age of instant gratification.
Yeah.
And that's not the way God's blessings or the Lord's blessings work.
To my knowledge, thank heavens, a child is not born a teenager.
A child not born a teenager.
Eventually they grow
I would-
older. Right.
I'll tell you, if a child is born a teenager, my condolences to the mother and her labor pains. All righty, everyone. I will see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.